Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and the Wandering Scribe. And joining us today is an author making their official debut here on the show. Now, my guest today has been reading and writing science fiction since he was 11 years old, publishing The Resistance, his debut series, back in 2023. His love for dystopian and sci-fi started with The Hunger Games, and now he has any sci-fi book he can get his hands on. And when he's not tossing up new story ideas or building a new bookshelf, you can usually find him at the beach, hiking up new trails, binge watching a new show or movie he can randomly pick with his eyes closed, or enjoying the Californian weather in shorts all year round. So, without further ado, let's give a huge round of applause to today's guest, fellow Californian author, Mr. Daniel House. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome, Daniel. I'm so excited to have you here. So, before we dive into a little bit about your book and your background as a writer and author, is there anything else you would like to share with our viewers and listeners?
I think you hit the nail on the head, actually.
All right, perfect. So, as a little teaser for our viewers and listeners, I know that in your bio, your book series, The Resistance, came out back in 2023. But for people who are now just learning about this series for the first time, what can you give them as a little teaser of what to expect in that series?
Yeah, so The Resistance is a YA. It's kind of a different take on dystopian, just because we're not in a dystopian yet. We're trying to stop it, and we're not in a like a post-apocalyptic world just yet. We're just trying to stop it from a dystopian or apocalyptic story from actually happening. So I guess that's kind of what makes it different and more so what you'd expect, because it's not in a post-apocalyptic, post-dystopian or in a dystopian society. We're not dealing with tyrannical governments in fully just yet. So the problems and the internal conflicts and the basic story, it kind of goes more than just politics or just tyranny. It kind of goes to a little bit of everyday life kind of a thing, because it is a YA kind of a story. So you kind of start with these normal human problems you would have every day, and then it just amplifies as the series goes on, basically.
Nice. Very, very nice. So, very curious, Daniel, what sort of pushed you to become an author? Were you always a creative person growing up, or there a specific aha moment that you would consider your origin story as an author?
Yeah, it's a kind of an interesting story, just because it really started like at the end of fifth grade. My friends were just they were just, at the benches, they were writing comics, they were just sharing stories and whatever. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And then beginning of sixth grade was when my friend, who I've known for the past 20 plus years, he, you know, said, hey, maybe you should try drawing comics. I'm like, okay. I tried it and I couldn't draw. So, like, at least compared to everybody else, that all my other friends. So I decided maybe I could just write it out. Right.
Right.
So at that point I just threw story ideas out and everything, and and The Resistance was actually my first kind of thought of an idea of a book when I was 11. So, and that kind of stemmed from learning about a little bit, because I was in history class learning about World War II, and I just kind of fascinated by it. So I kind of drew inspiration from that, just from regular schooling and everything. And I drafted The Resistance, kind of wrote not the best first draft, but who writes a really good first draft at 11 years old.
Mm.
Um, and then over the course of the next 10 years, that same friend who encouraged me to start writing, he asked me in sixth grade, hey, because he obviously he read it, would you ever consider publishing The Resistance? I said, no, not at all, because I just didn't know what will come about of it, and just I just didn't feel the need to publish it. The
Mm.
day before I started high school, he asked the same question. I said, no, the story was nice and everything, but it's time to, I guess, grow up.
Right.
like, because it's high school. It's, that's where, you're gonna make a lot of memories or whatever. Um, and then the day before I left for college, he asked me again, and I said the exact same answer. I said, no, I mean, now it's really time to grow up because, college, being an adult and everything like that.
Hmm.
Then for, you know, it seemed like everybody found that passion in 2020. I was
Yes.
not one of those people. I was always, for me, I usually arrive late to the party. Like everyone is on this new trend.
Hmm.
I arrive a year later. That's exactly what happened here. I found that it's kind of Rowling kind of inspiration where she said it sort of fell into her head. That kind of inspiration kind of happened to me when I was at an internship. I was just helping an event, and it literally just hit me in the head. It just injected itself into my brain. I said, okay, I can't deny this any longer. Right. So that 10-year kind of waiting period, I can't wait on this any longer. So I went to Target, got a composition notebook, and just started writing whatever and wherever, kind of reimagining this resistance world. And then 2 years later, I ended up publishing it. So
Amazing. Absolutely amazing, Daniel. So now let's fast forward a little bit in history. So it's now 2023, and you're now just at the stage of getting the resistance exactly the way you want it. Now, there are some fan questions I'm going to be asking you throughout the interview. And as a starter for this part of the interview, when you began writing the resistance and formatting it from when you started writing back as 11th grade, back as an 11th grader, sorry. What was sort of the challenges you discovered when looking back at your story with fresh eyes and a fresh perspective?
um I guess how because since I wrote it as an 11-year-old, the great challenge was how can I kind of sort of modernize it, or I guess bring it up to my own personal tastes because my tastes
Mm,
have changed over the kind of past 10 years. There wasn't a lot of internal conflict with my protagonist, even when I wrote the real first draft in 2021.
right.
There wasn't a lot of story to it. I didn't really know where I was going to go. I was just writing to write it just because it was
Mm,
fun and everything. But then peeling back the layers, I think first I got my first edit from my first editor, and she kind of said, okay, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you need to kind of filter out in terms of, okay, where's the plot going, where's the story going, where's this our so-called main character going? Because I've up, 10 chapters in, and she's like, I have no idea who this person is. So I guess more so it was who was my protagonist, or who and what was my protagonist, and how would he influence kind of the rest of the story. Um, and then I think this another big challenge was because it's a YA kind of story, and you see a lot of YA stories, they have this really brilliant kid who just seems to make all the adults kind of look amateurish, right?
right.
Because they may be like geniuses or whatever, which is fine, but it's almost as if the adults have no say or have, their years of experience almost don't mean much. And I think the challenge that I wanted to address was because it's YA, because they're growing up, how do they start as kind of background characters, but they still make an impact?
Mm,
But then as they get older, right, when you're fighting in a war or whatever, your body and your mind, they sharpen, they get stronger. Now you can kind of put them in these situations, these adult-like situations, and force them to either grow or change or just kind of, flatten in a crucible. I think those are the two challenges.
nice. All right. And that's another little fun fan question for you, Daniel. Do you have a writer's routine or ritual? And also within that, do you consider yourself a writer who uses an outline, or you're more of a panzer or just plotter for your stories?
I don't really know if I have a routine. It like I wouldn't spend like, I mean, some people I know that would spend 10 minutes meditating or praying or listening to music. For me, I just, because my life is kind of very busy, there is no time to say, okay, let me just calm down for 5 minutes, really get into it. No, I have to get into this because I don't have 5 minutes to spare. To just get focused. And I think what was the second question?
The second question was oh gosh, now I'm even forgetting it. Oh, that's
It's
never
all
happened
good.
before. So definitely a writer's routine, which you did say. Oh, now I remember it.
I was
Do
the
you consider yourself a writer who uses an outline or a writer who is more of a pantser slash plotter?
for right now, I'm more of like a pantser just because when I wrote The Resistance, I just needed any sort of inspiration, any sort of just any idea that popped into my head. I'm like, okay, I could use or not use or whatever. I want to become more of a plotter using an outline and everything because I think it'll structure my brain and organize my brain because there's so many thoughts that run in that I can get kind of confused by.
Mm-hmm.
But in a way, I kind of want to be both because I don't want to be so structured to where when as author for us authors we have this inspiration moment that just happens, this influx of inspiration or influx of an idea that could change the story or change it in a kind of a big way. But I don't want to be so structured to where I can't have that liberty to do that. Nor do I want to be so fluid to where I can't remember all the little minute details or even the way that the plot's supposed to go or where the characters are supposed to go and how they change and all of that.
Absolutely, 100%. Now, when you began reworking the draft for Resistance, what were the goals you had for yourself as the author, but also what was the promise you were making to your future readers of this series?
I think the goal, at least because when I was just starting out, it was just if I like it at all, right? That was the only metric I can kind of go by.
Mm,
Um, More so, I guess, make it specific. Was there did the story flow kind of the way I wanted it? Did the characters kind of, um, I guess, kind of make sense to me within that world? Um, but I guess, in terms of what am I, the promise I'm making my reader, the only promise I could really make, because it seems like, within each genre or subgenre, there's so many different takes and trends and everything like that. I think the one promise I'll tell my readers is that I'm creating what I considered, at least from my own ability, from that time period, from that own with what I know now, that whatever story I create, it's me giving my all. It's me giving my best iteration of what I think a story is and what I believe in terms of and what my tastes are at the time could change in the next 2, 3, 5 years. But at least for right now, this is with all my skills, with what I know, this is the best story I could possibly create. And also in a way, put a piece of myself into the book. So where it kind of stands out from everybody else,
mhm.
right? So it also matches the genre, but it also allows me to kind of work and kind of put in my own kind of flavor, I guess.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also another fan question which I want to ask you, Daniel, is as an author, how do you handle edits and revisions, your edits and revisions, and then of course your editors' edits and revisions, and staying true to your vision and your voice? Because I definitely feel among the many things we authors, deal with and struggle with, I think that is probably one of the biggest ones where edits are important, but you wonder how much of your voice will you have to sacrifice with the edits and rewrites?
Right. So edits and revisions, at least because being a pantser, it's the most frustrating thing
Hmm.
just because if you can always have another inspiration, a moment of realization or an epiphany that changes the entire story. So for me, it'll definitely to quell that to bring it to structure, I guess. Um, as in terms of an editor, I think obviously getting edits back, it's always kind of a nerve-wracking thing because you don't know if they're
Hmm.
gonna like it. They're gonna tell you, "Oh, your story sucks" or something like that. But the one thing that kept me kind of, uh, I guess, humble is the fact that I think it was like on a Reddit thread or something, but they said you pay your editor to critique your book, and then you're getting mad when they critique your book? Well, you paid them and hired them to critique your book, right? So I mean, that's if there's anyone to get mad or frustrated at, maybe it's just you because you paid money, you invested in this editor and everything. And of course, editors could be hit or miss or whatever, but
Right.
um, yeah, I that's always what kept me sort of humble and everything. And even just reading through the edits, you have to have this you know kind of a humble kind of a thing of you. What I figured out is there's a knowing, I guess, where you want your story to go and what your characters want to do. Because there have been some times where, having gone through a ton of editors, that they'll suggest certain things to be changed, and I said quietly, no, I disagree because this is what I'm trying to tell. This is what I'm trying to refer to in terms of subtext, in terms of allegories and or metaphors or certain themes that I would rather push instead of what they're kind of suggesting. So there's a way to gracefully accept criticism and even take a lot of criticism and
Mhm.
just use it for your novels. But there also is you have to, if you really believe that this aspect of your story or this word or even the sentence works so much better, just plant your foot down and say, "Nah, I'll live with this. I'll live with this one." Plus, in the way, in the end, it's your story, so it's not like this editor can just demand that you do it,
Right.
demand to make changes. So
That is very true. That is very true, Daniel. And this actually kind of leads into another question, which I'm very interested to ask and hear your thoughts on, which is, as authors, when we start off, before we get our team of editors, cover artists, beta, and ARC readers, it's just us in the beginning. And sometimes we're hesitant to share what we are working on with those in our inner circle, like friends and even family members. So for you, Daniel, at what point did you make the decision that, okay, I'm going to tell people what I'm working on? And what was their overall reaction like?
yeah, so I think it was when it was my second book. More so than when I told friends and family. Of course, the person that who knew that I've known for 20 years, he knew about it from the very beginning, right? Um, in terms of telling friends and family, that was probably in the second book, just because I was so insecure about the first one, and
Mhm.
I was like, okay, let me get the second one out. So because for me, it was, guess, was more of like a preparation kind of thing. Like the first one, I had no idea what I was doing, so maybe in the second one where I'm a little bit more prepared and I know what to do now, it's kind of like this mental connection between the two of like, okay, I wasn't ready to tell them. Now that I feel like my skills have improved just a little bit, maybe I can tell them. And it was pretty much supportive. There wasn't, I'm not saying my family's like a big reader, a big, they're enthusiastic about reading, but they were pretty much supportive. Yeah, there's like not overly ecstatic about it, but also you know, they're basically just the minimum uh requirement for his support, but which I'm grateful for. I'm not saying that I'm asking them to,
Right.
bend the knee or anything, but it was just nice to know that there is support, basically.
That's awesome, Daniel. That is
Yeah.
really, really cool. Before we get to some reflective and opinion based questions, I did have two other fun favorite fan questions I wanted to ask you, which is, throughout your series, what has been your favorite scene to write? And also, what has been your most challenging scene to write?
Oh, wow. Okay. My favorites. Do I have to say something specific or just kind of like a ballpark kind of an answer?
It could be whatever you want to be. If it's a specific like spoiler scene, you can be as vague as you want it to be.
Okay. Okay. Um, wow. Kind of just narrowing it down. I think because I love the idea that death it's supposed to mean something,
Hmm.
right? Whatever people believe in, it's fine. But a lot of times death isn't really a comfortable thing for us to talk about. So putting that into our stories, making death meaningful, having implications not just to the characters but to the plot overall. I think those are my favorite scenes to kind of write, just because you also have to think of, okay, did I build this character up enough for people to care about it? right? And do the people care about the story enough, or do I care about the story enough to where
Mhm.
that crescendo kind of death kind of works and changes? Um, so I'm gonna be a little bit vague, but towards the end of the first book, there is a death scene, right? And it kind of shatters the mold for our protagonist, who's obviously, still a teenager, but you have to, think about it like as a teenager, how would you kind of deal with death? Like, because
Right.
I remember a um what was it? Someone said something about like it's you're asking a teenager to deal with death, to deal with all these kind of mature adult things. And so I kind of took that idea. I'm like, how can we kind of mess up our protagonist, mess up our characters, and mess up our story with that idea of teenagers shouldn't have to know what death feels like,
Mhm.
or really anybody in general, but just more so a kid. How would they kind of deal with that? How would they not be able to deal with that? So those are probably my favorite scenes to write, just because you have to kind of build and lead up to everything. Um, Most challenging is anything that's more of like a human kind of a conversation where it could just be two humans just talking about life, talking about mistakes they made. Because I guess more so for me, because prose is my biggest problem.
Mhm.
So when you have two humans that talk, do they talk poetically like Shakespeare, or do they just have a real one-on-one conversation where there's not really a lot of subtext and not a lot of showing versus telling? It's more so me just telling you how I'm feeling, because it's just us two talking, us two at a bar, us two, you know, at a restaurant or something like
Right.
that. I think those are the more difficult ones, but they're also fun to write as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And this actually goes into probably two of my favorite reflective questions, which is the first one being authors in the digital age and what that truly means, because the industry has changed within the last 20 years. Social media has played a huge role for
Right.
authors. It's a platform for us to grow our brand. It's a place to connect and resonate with our readers and fans. It's also a place to meet other authors in the industry, as well as grow our team. And with that being said, it is a double-edged sword, and it does need to be talked about in that regard, where again, there's the positive side, but there's also the negative side, which is, of course, hate speech, trolls, spam, negativity, and all that, which I've talked with a lot of authors on the show. And while they've never encountered that, they have seen it happen to close colleagues of theirs. And of course, imposter syndrome is always present and waiting to strike. So for you, Daniel, when you began writing this series, when you wrote out the complete story outline for this series and however many books it would take to fully flesh out this universe, do you have any moments of heightened anxiety or imposter syndrome? And what has disciplined you to continue writing this series? Because no matter what, for you, this series needs to be told and shared with others.
I maybe I've had imposter syndrome. I didn't even know what the term was when I first started, which was kind of funny because I've also felt embarrassed about that, because everyone would make posts like, "Oh, I'm imposter syndrome, whatever. I don't feel like I'm a real writer." I personally just never felt that way.
Okay.
I I don't know why. I feel like I'm missing out on something. Um, yeah, I just never felt that, because I've always kind of put in my mind to, okay, I put pen to paper and I wrote this before. I didn't think it was good, but at the same time, I guess you consider me an author. And then I guess I kind of look at it like a checklist, like a prerequisite, like a criteria that needs to be met. Did you start writing the book? Did you publish the book? Is it out there in the ethos, or in the ether?
Mm,
Yeah, and then cool, then you're a writer. Like, I feel like maybe people overthink it, but at the same time, we are also authors and we overthink a lot of our stories. So it makes total sense. Kind of, I just never kind of thought of myself as, or never kind of encountered imposter syndrome, maybe in the way that most other people have. If anything, it's been very, very small.
Absolutely. Okay, that makes sense. Now, the next question is I'm really eager to hear your thoughts on this one, which is this discussion of whether or not we are in a golden age or an iron age. And the reason I ask this question is that a lot of authors that I've had on the show, Daniel, up to this point, a majority of them are in this mix of, they've been writing for a very long time, or more recently, they began their start during what I call the COVID years, the lockdown years. A lot of them began in the early onset back in 2020. Some began in the middle, 2022, 2023. I myself would consider myself part of the COVID generation of authors. And from that point, the COVID years birthed a new generation of authors, artists, narrators, and so forth. And I've been thinking of, well, are we in a golden age because of that, or are we more in iron age, specifically referring to AI now being more prevalent than it was before? So, in your opinion, Daniel, from your own experiences, do you believe that we are in a golden age or more of an iron age?
I'll say golden age, just because AI is kind of like a new thing, right? If you want to say like in the next 2 years, how much AI just takes control, then maybe you can say we're in an iron age. But I think to your point, in the COVID years, everyone just seemed to, because there was nothing to do, so they spent their time in, writing or creating music or narrating or anything like that. But it all stemmed from, I guess, basically a lot of humans had no idea what to do during
Right.
COVID. So they just did what they couldn't do because they were so busy. They wrote, they read more books, they did all this. I would say we're in a golden age because there's such an influx of talent that just flooded the market, which is
Mm-hmm.
I think is a good thing because people, maybe there was a really good writer, but he or she couldn't do it because he or she was taking, they was on two jobs in college or taking care of kids, having a family and everything like that, where they just didn't have time to do and invest in themselves and invest in their books. But now they during COVID they could, and they found a way to do
Right.
it. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen with AI the next couple of years, to see how AI changes the market. Uh, and if we are, I think next couple of years will kind of define if we were in a golden age and now we're transitioning into an iron age to an AI age, or if it was just kind of a facade and we were always just in an iron age to begin with.
100%. Absolutely agree. And now we get into the business side of being an author. And let's do a little icebreaker questions, which are also fan questions. Here they are, Daniel. So the first fan question is, when you began publishing your books, what was one aspect of the publishing industry that really surprised you? And the follow up to that is, looking back on your journey thus far, what is one thing you would have done differently in terms of publishing your books?
So I guess the first thing that surprised me was the editing costs. Because I remember like reading like, okay, where do you find an editor? What kind of edits do you want to have? I remember going on Reedsy, and there were the
Oh,
pri
yes.
and the prices they put out was like, if you want a developmental editor and a line editor, each one is going to cost you like $2,000-3,000. And I look at
Yeah.
my bank account, I'm like, I don't have $2,000-3,000 per, right, just to get this book out. And I'm like, as much as I would love to have that kind of money coming in every single month,
Mhm.
I probably couldn't be able to afford it. But so that was the biggest surprise, just knowing how much everything costs. Like I get that's super important, right? I get that's super important, same with your cover art and everything like that. But I thought that was very kind of a steep price, kind of an eye opener. Um, and I think what I would have done differently was I would have started earlier. Like even if because I thought it was the whole you need to have a book out, then you can market, then you can do all get into the get your hands in the weeds and kind of get your hands in the mud and kind of get your feet wet.
Yes.
Uh, but there's some other people who I know, like on Instagram or whatever, they started kind of just sharing little tidbits of what they love to read, what they love to write, where they're journaling and kind of recording their entire debut kind of novel and how they're writing it and how they're doing all that stuff. Um, and others they had like short story and they built email lists off of that. I wish I could have taken that more seriously, but then I don't kick myself over it because it was obviously I was way in the past, and I just had no idea what I was doing. So I was just kind of just walking around, just like no direction, whatever. Um, but I would have started early if I were
Mm.
to go back and kind of do it again.
All right, nice. And another thing also to talk about the business side of being an author is, of course, understanding one's audience. And I've talked to a lot of people on the show, and some are not divisive, but they definitely give their own thoughts on this topic. Some have written to their target audience, their market audience, which is sort of like been conditioned into us as authors. But I've also had a lot of authors on the show who write to a specific readership, YA, NA, AF, and that's also been very helpful. So for you, Daniel, and again, another two-part question, do you think you have a good idea of your target audience? And follow up, would you say that you're an author who markets to a specific target audience within your genre? Or do you consider yourself an author who writes and publishes to a specific reader type?
So I think I definitely kind of market towards YA just because it kind of categorizes it in easier for me, and I'm able to kind of see like, okay, within this YA space, like how can I operate from there? I think yeah, I think sorry, I got lost in it. I forgot what your first question was, but
It was, do you have a good idea of
oh
your
yeah.
target audience?
Yeah. The YA space is kind of different now because ever since TikTok came out, it's like if people have like different interests and people are on social media and everything like that,
Mhm.
especially when I was younger, when social media first became like a popular thing, it was almost as if my t taste buds had changed in entertainment and what I wanted. So
Same.
yeah, so I think I'll say I have a good kind of understanding of what the YA kind of genre kind of requires and what the audience kind of requires because in the end we're all still human, so we still have the same kind of young adult tendencies that we all share that we can kind of market towards. But with social media, with TikTok, with short form content, that those tastes can definitely change. Um,
Mm.
yeah.
All right. All right. And then I think another important question to talk about is, of course, finding our voice as an author, because that's probably the major thing that we want to do is showcase our individuality, but also within the genres that we're writing for, we also have to understand that there is an expectation that readers expect. Your book can't be too original that's going to lose their interest, but it
Yeah.
can't be literally a carbon copy of a book that already exists. It is a fine line between authenticity, originality, and respecting the sources that came before. So for you, Daniel, how have you been able to balance the two? And follow up to that question, do you think that networking and connecting with other authors helps us, our own voice comes out? Sorry, that came out weird, but
No, it's all right.
networking, do you think that networking plays a factor in helping us achieve our individuality?
I think networking does because you get to get inspiration from how other authors see the same genre as you. You get to kind of connect with them and kind of even if you read their stuff or how they market or anything, they can kind of get a kind of a flavor for how they market, how they see writing and everything like that. You could kind of take tidbits and kind of use it and let it inspire you and let it and kind of draw inspiration from that so you can kind of create your own kind of voice and everything. It's hard to balance because I read books where you have to make a carbon copy in order for it to be successful, like writing to market or something like that, or um, yeah, it's kind of really hard to do. But I think if you can kind of meet the bare minimum expectations of whatever your genre you're writing, then you can have a little bit of playing room, a little bit of room to kind of put your own kind of originality into it. Kind of a fine line, and also at the same time kind of a blurry one as well, because
Mhm.
it's just how do you know that you're meeting the bare minimum? How do you know that you're meeting these tropes? How do you know that you're being more original and kind of saying, okay, I met this certain science fiction trope, but it seems like it's like every other trope that's out there. How can I make it original? Like it's even for me, the question is still baffling.
Yes, absolutely. And as an add-on to that, are there any people you'd like to give a quick personal thank you and shout out to who have helped you on your journey thus far?
Yeah, so there's this friend of mine. I don't know if I should say his name, but I'll do it just to embarrass him. Um, his name is Ryan Johnson. He's the guy I've known for 20 plus years. We've known each other since kindergarten, but really haven't really didn't really start hanging out till like second grade and then really fourth grade and on. But yeah, he was always the one. He was always kind of interested in my story. It was always like kind of like when I look back, no matter how bad it was written when I first wrote it, it was like he still tolerated. He still liked it. He even asked me 3 times why, go ahead and publish it. I mean, what are you gonna lose, right? This in this whole in within that tenure, within that 10 years, when I did decide to publish it, he was the first guy I called. He was the first guy I went to, and he was like super ecstatic about it. Um, I'll also say because it took me a while to find an actual editor, like someone I can actually kind of build a professional relationship with. Just because instead of just going on Fiverr and just having them do a
Mhm.
transaction, do a business or whatever, they're actually getting to know me and I get to know them. We keep a professional relationship, and she kind of knows and expects what I'm going to kind of bring to the table. It's my editor, Caitlin Miller. Absolute joy to work with. Absolute joy to work with. So it's when she edits is when it feels like she's a friend that's reading my manuscript, but it also is very much an editor and gives her opinion on it and kind of says this can flow better. This could work on its own. So I think those are the two people for sure that comes to
All
mind.
right. Awesome. Awesome, Daniel. And we now reach the final question of this amazing author interview. And it's actually probably one of my new favorite questions to ask. So, as authors, there's a lot of workshops that help us understand our craft and, some tidbits here and there. But I think the one thing, if I was teaching a class, my lesson would be is that, there is no guarantee that your book is going to be a success, and understanding the paths for us authors, which is there are two: to be an author, to be known as an author. One is
Yeah.
dedicated to the craft, the other is dedicated to the business. They lead to the same result, which is, success, but the matters to achieve that are very different, and it all falls back onto goals and expectations. Because I'm sure you'll definitely agree, Daniel, being an author is not a get rich quick scheme. It's not a
Yeah.
quick money maker. It is a
Yeah.
grind and everything. So that is what I would teach in a workshop class. Now, let's imagine a scenario. If you were giving a workshop slash seminar class to a bunch of new and aspiring writers, what would be the one lesson that you would teach them that would also be seen as a word of wisdom to instill as they leave?
That's a good question. There is a this book this book I'm working on hasn't come out yet, but it's a quote. It's called "Embrace the Chaos."
Ooh, I
Kind
like it.
it's this whole author thing it's a roller coaster. It's like a riptide. It's like sometimes you'll feel like you're flying in the air on a Pegasus, and then the next thing you know, you get grounded by Zeus's thunderbolt, right?
Mhm.
It kind of feels like that. So, and all the messiness and whole imposter syndrome, not knowing your voice, knowing that, you, like you said, you can have to be an author, be a successful, be known as an author. You have to accept that there's going to be a mess to it, right? It's a whole
Right.
bunch of things are going to happen at the same time. You're not going to know how to deal with it. It's kind of like life, right? But
Yes.
the worst thing you can do is just freak out over it, right? And remember, I guess again, everyone has different goals and everything like that. But my thing is, it's just to embrace all of it, embrace the mess, embrace how terrible your writing can be, how good your writing can be. Allow yourself to feel all of the emotions so that when you come out on the other side, and then that situation happens again, where you feel that imposter syndrome, where you feel like you're not getting anywhere, you remember that you were able to kind of overcome those feelings. And I
Mhm.
guess most importantly, just focus on the craft. That's the one guarantee that you can get, is that you may not make a whole bunch of money, but you can eventually see success in the sense of, I got better every single day, every single year, every book that came out. I'm more proud of it because I learned from the mistakes of the previous. So yeah, and I guess the last thing would be just to don't be like me and wait. Just go out there and just start embarrassing yourself online. I mean, everybody has done it, and we all look back at our videos and say, oh, that looks really bad. But, that's the whole point of embracing all of the mess, all of the chaos. Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%, Daniel. And with that, viewers and listeners, we conclude this amazing author interview here on the show. Want to give a huge thank you to Mr. Daniel House for coming on the show, making his official debut, and telling us all about his book series Resistance and his journey as an author. Now, Daniel, again, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank
And
you.
before we end, where can people find you on social media if they want to reach out and connect? And where can people buy copies of your books?
So to buy copies of my books, they are on Amazon. Just type up The Resistance and then put my name on there, Daniel House. So you'll be able to find them. In terms of social media, Instagram is probably the best way, just because I'm there more often than not. It's at author Daniel House, and that's where you'll be able to connect with me.
Awesome. I will link all that down below in the description of this video. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for the last week of this incredible month of July. Now, I have a few more episodes rolling out before we officially end July. So make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below to stay up to date with the last few episodes coming out. Again, a huge thank you to Daniel for coming on the show. We wish him the very best with his
Thank you.
books and future projects down the road. And if you would like to see Daniel in a follow-up interview, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below as well. And until next time, this is the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill signing out, wishing you all a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. And we'll see you all in the final episodes this week of the month of July. Until then, take care.